Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany. I am thrilled that you are listening. I am your host, Brittany Ford, and I am a registered holistic nutritionist and podcaster and content creator. And I'm also studying advanced fertility nutrition and a course creator as well. So all of the things. If you're new here, welcome. I interview a wide range of people in the health space. We dive into all sorts of topics, really to examine what is trending in the world of health and wellness today, what works, what doesn't work, debunking myths, and all sorts of things like that. And today is a very similar day to that. I mean, I do solo episodes sometimes, and there will be some more coming out very soon. But today is a deep dive into all things calories. This was so interesting. I have never done a full episode on calories before, like just simply calories. And I say simply because you think you know most things about calories, especially as a nutritionist. And then you have someone on the show like Hari Mix, and you are like, okay, wow, I actually don't know that much. And there's so much more to explore and learn. And that is exactly what happened in this episode. So it's filled with really evidence-based information on how calories work in the body. We also talk about calories in versus calories out. What does that actually mean? Is it a myth? Is it true? How does it hold up? And most importantly, we talk about measuring your caloric burn and your daily caloric burn. And what does that actually look like? Is it possible to measure that? And yeah, what does it mean when your Oura Ring says you burn this many calories on a daily basis? Like, or your Peloton says, okay, you just did a workout and you burned 400 calories. Like, is that actually accurate? So we dive all into that. And he is the founder of a company called Calorify, which is actually the only proven scientific way to measure how many calories you burn daily. So and we get into the science of it and how it works. It's very, very interesting, very nuanced, and I'm excited about it. And I'm excited to share this with you. So from this episode, maybe you go and order the test because you're like, hey, I want to know. Or you just get information and you use it and understand your choices better and make healthier choices from this, which is always kind of the goal of this podcast. Now I'm going to read the DM of the week before we get started here. And this one, again, I don't reveal who they're from, but most of the time they're from my Instagram. And this one says, hi, I just wanted to drop you a message and tell you how much your course has impacted me. So she's referring to my Baby Steps course, which just came out last month. She says, after my third miscarriage last year, I felt so lost and disconnected. Your course came at just the right time. The module on mind-body connection, I think she meant to say, truly spoke to me, and practicing the daily affirmations you suggested has started to change the way I treat myself and think about my journey. It's been incredibly empowering to feel that I'm not alone in this and to learn ways to nurture my mental health. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for creating such a compassionate space. That is so sweet. Thank you so much. I love getting these reviews and these DMs and things like that. I have a preconception health course called Baby Steps, and it's a 7-week online course with a 90-day proven protocol. And it's basically about how to optimize your health before you start trying to conceive. I did this, I've had several or many clients do this. There's many members now in the course. And if you want to enroll in it, you can do so before the prices increase, which is going to happen probably in the summer. Yeah. So you can go onto my website. It's linked right there and take a look at that. And yeah, there's a lot in there. I really took a very comprehensive approach when I was creating it because I wanted to answer all of the questions that somebody might have. So there are lessons on mind-body connection. There's also lessons on how to talk to your partner about it. Say you really want to optimize your health before you start trying in your fertility, but maybe your partner or your husband or whatever doesn't want to. How do you kind of navigate that? And how do you navigate that relationship? We talk about that. I talk about detoxification and elimination. We talk about anatomy, hydration, nutrition, biohacks. Of course, you should see this biohack module. I'm so proud of it. It's actually my favorite module. It's called Lifestyle and Biohacks. And I talk about everything that I did, everything that you can do, from vaginal steaming to acupuncture to red light therapy to cold therapy, heat therapy, all things. And I feel like it's actually going to be the module I update the most, because there's always new things that people are doing to kind of enhance their hormones and their preconception health. So anyway, definitely take a look at that if you're interested or know somebody who is. This course is honestly, it's all for the people who are kind of like me, who are type A and want to optimize before trying to conceive. But it's also for the people who are struggling, and the people who've had miscarriages, or the women over 40 who are saying, hey, like, I'm worried I might not be able to get pregnant. What can I do? I don't want to just go to IVF and quickly choose that and go through that and go through the struggle and the stress and the cost of that. The success rates of IVF are actually very low for how much you have to pay for it. Anyway, so it's for them. It's for the women and the men out there to empower you to be healthier so that you can conceive and have an easier time conceiving, have a healthier pregnancy, baby, and beyond. So that is up. I'm so proud of that. That course took like a year and a half to produce. And it's not even at the point where I'm like done. It's at the point where it's out in the public and it's great and it's solid and I'm proud of it. But there is so much I want to add to it. So it's always going to be updated. And the nice thing is if you enroll now, you actually get locked in on the price. So when I do the updates and the new features and we start doing live Q&A sessions, and I start bringing on experts, and I start adding like one-on-one coaching, maybe not the one-on-one coaching, but everything else will be included and you will already be locked in. So when the price increases for the public as a member already, you won't have that happen to you. Anyway, so definitely check that out if you're interested. I'm really proud of it. And I love those DMs when people talk to me about it. A shout out to Glycanage. Oh my gosh, Glycanage is really cool. They test your biological age through looking at your inflammation levels. I remember the first time I got tested with Glycanage, it said I was 10 years older than I was. And I was low-key depressed after I got that result. And it took me a while to navigate it and understand it. And ultimately, I realized a few things. One, it was during the pandemic, so I wasn't necessarily surprised that my results were that much higher. Two, I was in a job I didn't like. My business wasn't able to be full-time yet. I was stuck in an apartment. I couldn't do anything. We didn't have as much space. We didn't have our dog yet. Like all of these life things that have happened since then hadn't happened. And I don't think mentally I was in the right space. And I think my stress levels were high. And so it was very, very eye-opening for me to take control and do something more about my health once I saw that result. So if you have always wanted to know biologically how old you are, not just chronologically, you can do so. Check out Glycanage. I love them, and I will be testing again after pregnancy. Pregnancy increases your results, so there's no point in me really testing right now. And I will probably wait until maybe 3 to 6 months postpartum, and then I will test again to kind of see where I'm at. And then definitely a year later, next year, I will do another test just to assess my levels. So I really recommend that. And I think that it's very fascinating. And I also love the women behind Glycanage, great biohacking company. And I just love seeing more women in the space. And a shout out to Bioptimizers. Bioptimizers came out with this drink that's got like so many mushrooms in it, and it's great for brain power. Now, I am taking this while I am pregnant. So that's my choice. That's what I'm doing. And I feel fantastic on it. It's got things like chaga in it, lion's mane, and I have the chocolate flavored one. So what I do is I add 2 scoops to a glass, add coconut milk and mix it. And it's like flavored chocolate coconut milk. It's so good. And it's really, really great for improving focus, memory, and energy. And so because I'm kind of watching my caffeine intake right now, that when I have that, I feel like, wow, my brain is really, really on. And anyone who has been pregnant knows that baby brain is a real thing where your memory recall definitely goes down. And so I have experienced that, and it's really, really awesome to, drink this mushroom elixir from them and enjoy it. So I will link that in the show notes for you. If you're somebody who's having like brain health symptoms or low energy, definitely check it out. You can use my discount code biohackingbrittany in all capitals to get a nice discount off of everything, off of all of their products. And same with Glycanage. Biohacking Brittany saves you money. So definitely use that discount code and link, and you will enjoy. I enjoyed this podcast episode today. I will catch you next week for another one. Feel free to send me any messages on Instagram at biohackingbrittany, or just biohacking on TikTok, or anywhere. My email, which is, I guess, I don't know if my email's public, but it's info@biohackingbrittany.com. Maybe now I will be spammed by everybody, but that's fine. You can send me a message there, and enjoy this podcast episode, and I will catch you next week. Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany. I am thrilled that you are listening to today's episode. We are diving into everything metabolism, performance optimization, and really understanding our body's energy in a very new and profound way using a new product I actually have never seen before, never seen anything like this. So joining me, I have the brilliant Hari Mix, who is the founder and CEO of Calorify. Now, Calorify is very interesting. We are going to dive all into that and how the product works. But before we even go there, I want to welcome Hari to the show. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Brittany. Thanks for having me. Doing great.
Yeah. So you are a scientist with a PhD from Stanford, and then you went to kind of, creating Calorify. Can you kind of take us back to that journey of what was that switch there, and why did you feel like you needed to move more into this metabolism space?
Yeah, really good question. So it wasn't so much a switch as it was kind of meshing two different parts of my life that were very complementary and took me in this direction towards metabolism. So on the one hand, I have a background as an elite athlete. I was one of the fastest distance runners in the US, actually beat the Rio Olympic champion a couple of times, and have gone on to become a top high altitude climber. So I've made high altitude ascents of a number of the world's highest mountains without using supplemental oxygen, put up new routes in the Himalayas and Andes, held speed records on peaks like Half Dome. And I think all of these activities, like the distance running, the mountain climbing, right, are all very, very aerobic activities. And a lot of your performance comes down to how well you perform metabolically. And in particular with the high altitude climbing, I was interested in manipulating my metabolism to adapt to these extreme environments, particularly going without oxygen, up to like 27,000 feet. And so one of the things that would happen to me on these trips, like I was on Everest, I've been on Everest a few times, but back in 2013 was my first trip. I lost like 25 pounds, a lot of which was muscle. This is like a devastatingly bad outcome and one that I didn't want to replicate. And so I kept, trying to use new tricks, and just learning about my metabolism and trying to improve my metabolism was one of those key things. So lifelong passion there. And then professionally, I have a background as a scientist. Like you said, I have a bachelor's and PhD from Stanford, and I was a professor at Santa Clara University for 7 years before leaving to found the company. And it was when I was actually starting at Santa Clara, I was building a state-of-the-art lab to measure oxygen and hydrogen isotopes in water. And I became aware of this technology, this method called doubly labeled water. And it's been around actually for a really long time. The science goes back actually all the way to 1949. It was first done on mice in 1955 and first done on humans in 1982. And I just thought it was really cool. So what this method is the only way of actually measuring, not guesstimating, but actually measuring how many calories someone burns in the real world. There's no other method that's ever been invented. And I just thought it was super important. And I was blown away that there was this technology that existed, and yet basically no one was doing it. There were only a few dozen scientists in the world that have this as their expertise. And it became, just, I kind of filed it away in the back of my head. I couldn't find anybody to collaborate with, in the anthropology department or biology department or anything else, and just kind of filed it away. And then really over the last few years was when I kept coming back to this method and saying, look, this is too important. Metabolic health and particularly metabolic diseases, all right, are the biggest public health problem we have in the world. Obesity related diseases are a $4.3 trillion a year problem. They're 3% of global GDP. Issues like diabetes, Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, autoimmune diseases, all of these things relate to your body's energy. And I'm just a very literal, tangible thinker. And I just thought, there's no big problem. There's no problem of scale that we've ever solved without measuring it. And so I left Santa Clara to found this company, Calorify, as you mentioned, with a very simple mission, a mission to measure the world's metabolism and to provide solutions to these enormous problems.
Wow. I love that. And I want to swing back quickly to what you were saying about climbing mountains, because I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. I'm assuming you probably have as well.
I haven't, it's actually a missing little link in my
Oh,
resume. I would love to go there. Would love to see East Africa.
yeah, yeah. And it was incredible. And I did take the altitude sickness medication to help with kind of like the altitude. And I remember similar to you, I don't think I lost 25 pounds, but after that climb, I lost a lot of weight. Like I came down very, very like skin and bones, very, very thin. And I actually just figured it was due to burning so many calories from hiking, like just like you said, like energy expenditure. I never ever thought it would possibly be equated to like the lack of oxygen and like how your body, how that changes at altitude. Is that kind of like what you mean by that when you were referencing that earlier?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. So it's definitely on the expenditure side. I've actually done this testing, Calorify's testing a variety of my outdoor trips. I know what my kind of normal baseline is here, my normal life here in California, maybe lifting weights a bit or going on dog walks or bike rides or, some easy hikes, that kind of a thing. And then I know what it's been like on one of these expeditions. So actually with Herman Poncer, our scientific advisor at Duke, right before we founded the company, we did some testing when I climbed the eighth highest mountain in the world without oxygen. And my energy expenditure basically tripled going to the summit for, this mountain Manaslu in Nepal. So yeah, it definitely means you burn more calories up there. My resting heart rate, for example, at a base camp of one of these mountains, like 16,000 feet or something like that, is roughly double what it is down here. But then you also run into this other side of the equation, which is there's so little oxygen that you can't actually digest. And so, my energy intake on summit day of Manaslu is probably about a 15,000 calorie day in terms of energy expenditure, like a truly extraordinary amount of energy. And I probably only ate about 800 calories max. So yeah, it's that combination of things. And, the other thing that happens on these big trips, maybe there's not as good of sanitation. You end up getting some stomach bugs. You end up, having a lot of GI issues. You're in uncertain environments, so your food and, what you're accustomed to, it's not as easy to prepare up there. And just all these things combined. So I actually did my very best on that trip, Manaslu, the eighth highest mountain without oxygen. I only lost 11 pounds and only 3 of that was muscle. I was doing a great job getting calories in base camp. I was getting a ton of protein. I was really, really making that a priority and brought a lot of protein powder with me. And then I was doing these mini strength workouts, just little trigger sessions, as I would call them, to just remind my muscle to, hey, hang on. And that worked really well for me. So the biggest thing you can do in terms of altitude is stay healthy. And the next biggest thing you can do is get those calories in when you can, right? Because when you're actually up super high on Kilimanjaro, I'm sure you didn't eat that many calories.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that because they do like a sunrise to the peak, right? So you kind of like start hiking. I think it was probably like, I don't know, 1 a.m. And then you get there by the time you get to the top at sunrise. And what they fed us at 1 a.m. was like tea and biscuits. And when you've never like hiked that high before, you hear that and you're like, wait, that's not enough food. I need way more than that. Like I need an energy drink. I need coffee. I need all of these things. But it's kind of like you're saying, like you actually aren't, like I wasn't hungry. Like I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I need all this food to fuel me. Yeah, it was definitely challenging, but I also trust the people who are taking us up there, that they obviously know what they're doing and have done this a bunch of times and know all about like food and altitude and exercise and everything like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a huge rabbit hole. We could talk about high altitude like the entire time. It's so fascinating how it has, all these different profound effects on your body. But, metabolism is kind of the core, right? Metabolism is life. Energy is life. And if you don't have energy, what else is there, right? So every single thing that happens in your body involves energy. And that's what we do at Calorify is we measure that so that you can at least understand, at a very top level, what you're putting in your body and then what you're doing with it.
Yeah, exactly. So how does your product actually work? Like I'm looking at it and I've looked at it a few times, and it's a drink. I'm assuming that you drink. Obviously it's powered by doubly labored water here that I'm reading this. And so how does that actually, how does it measure what your expenditure is? Like, how do you do it on a daily basis? Like, what does it look like for the average person to use it?
Yeah, I'll explain both the customer experience and then also explain kind of the science. So from a customer perspective, you're just going to order a kit and the kit's going to come to you in like 2 days. And in the kit, there is this bottle of doubly labeled water. That means that it's literally just H2O. There's nothing in the water, but we have tagged the hydrogen and the oxygen on those water molecules. So we've basically fingerprinted the water. It's only about a shot of water. It's a sip of water. So you're going to take this sip of water and then you're going to collect a few urine samples, 2 on day 1 and 1 on day 7. So we're going to get you that budget for the week. And then basically you just mail your urine samples back all in a small box about the size of a deck of cards. It's pre-labeled. You can put it in any USPS mailbox, including your home mailbox. It comes to us and you're going to get a report the same day that we receive those samples in our lab. So that's kind of the customer experience. It's an at-home kit. You can test however and whenever you want. It's kind of context dependent in the same way you can think about like blood work. Like, when would I want to do blood work? Well, it depends. Is it part of your annual physical? Are you going onto a particular medication and trying to get the dosage right? Are you trying to, improve or monitor a certain health condition? So it really just depends in terms of what your goal is. Are you an elite athlete trying to, measure your metabolism as you change your training? So just really depends. And then what we're actually doing is we're measuring calories in the only way that's ever been invented. And that is that we're measuring how much CO2 you breathe out over the course of that week. So maybe you're familiar with a VO2 max test or a resting metabolic rate test. You ever see a picture or video of somebody with a mask on their face and they're on a treadmill or an exercise bike? What they're doing is there's a flow of air through that mask, and the mask is basically measuring the amount of oxygen and CO2 going in and out of that mask. And so that's how you're getting, your calories like on the bike. And that's how you're getting your VO2 max or your aerobic threshold, your lactate threshold, all those kind of things. We're doing the exact same thing, exact same chemistry and math, but instead of getting your exhaled breath and making you wear this whole apparatus, you just get to live your normal life. You get to eat your normal diet. You get to do your normal exercise. You get to be yourself. And instead, we capture the chemical signature in your urine. So here's how that works. We are going to tag the hydrogens and oxygens on these water molecules, and you're going to take that sip of water. And then those hydrogens and oxygens are going to leave your body over the course of that week. And so we're going to measure that with these urine samples. Hydrogen leaves your body as water, like urine, breath, sweat. Oxygen leaves your body as water, but also as CO2. And so if I compare the rate that oxygen and hydrogen are leaving your body, I can quantitatively measure how much CO2 you're breathing out. So think about it this way. It's a perfectly accurate analogy. Imagine you have a car and we're a sensor hooked up to the tailpipe of that car. If I can measure the amount of exhaust coming out the tailpipe, I can directly calculate with a very high level of accuracy how much gasoline you're burning. And that's exactly what we're doing with your urine.
Introducing GlycanAge, the ultimate biological age test that helps you discover, measure, and optimize your health. With GlycanAge, understanding your body has never been simpler or more scientific. GlycanAge is more than just a number. It's a comprehensive analysis of your biological age determined by measuring chronic inflammation in your system. a direct result of your lifestyle choices. The test, which is backed by over 30 years of scientific research and validated by over 200,000 tests, gives you insights published in world-renowned medical journals. Getting started is super easy. The at-home test includes everything you need. Simply collect your sample and send it right back. And in just 3 weeks, the lab will analyze your sample and generate a detailed report on your biological age. They don't just stop there, though. Each glycan age test includes a free consultation with one of their experts. They'll help you understand your results and suggest lifestyle changes to enhance your health and longevity. Glycan age is unique. It responds to lifestyle interventions, unlike other aging clocks. Whether it's through caloric restriction or weight loss or any other healthy habit you might bring in, there are studies that show that these beneficial health changes really can make a difference in your glycan aging. Are you ready to take control of your health? You can use my code BiohackingBrittany at checkout for a 15% off discount on your glycan age test. Discover your true biological age with glycan age and start optimizing your life today. Nice. Yeah, that honestly makes a lot of sense. And it seems pretty straightforward and a very, very easy way for people to test versus like doing, those different things with the masks on that you see. And
Yeah.
It looks cool, but it's really not accessible for most people. So I love that it's an at-home test. So, say I do this test and I get my results and it says whatever it says about my metabolism. What do you recommend we go from there? Like, is it, okay, here's some things that you can do for the next 6 months and let's retest? Is that like typically the pathway for a customer, or what do you kind of see people do once they get their results?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And we're definitely, I'm sure, given your audience, we're going to be talking about this a little bit from a consumer perspective, but there are just so many applications of this to begin with. So first of all, a large chunk of our business is actually serving biotech and pharma companies that are trying to develop newer and better drugs. So we're basically helping them test whether or not their drugs work. Like, does this drug improve your metabolism? How does this drug change your calorie intake? All those kind of things. So another big segment of our company are like pro sports. We're working with a couple NBA teams, a couple NFL teams, a Tour de France team, a whole bunch of Olympians, and they have specific goals. So maybe their big chunk of your audience might be pretty athletic. So there are a few different things that we can do to help athletes. One of them is identify your individual fueling needs. So everyone has their own metabolism. It's your personal gas mileage. There's nothing good or bad, like morally, about this. I think oftentimes you'll see in like the checkout aisle at the supermarket, something, boost your metabolism. Like it's like, just know, number one, nobody's ever measured any of that. They're just saying that. And number two, there's this like assumption that like fast metabolism good, slow metabolism bad, but it doesn't actually work like that. It doesn't translate to outcomes. What you really do want to know, though, is what your metabolism is doing so that you can do whatever you're trying to do. So if it's an athlete, you want to know how much to fuel so that you can actually train at your best. So we'll measure your energy expenditure, and then you can dial in your calorie needs from there. Number two, athletes, and probably a lot in general population as well, are interested in their body composition. Everybody's talking a lot about weight, but what you really want to know is your body composition. How much body fat do you have versus lean mass? We are also, in addition to this metabolic, calories in, calories out test, we're the gold standard for both of those. We're also a very, very accurate, the most accurate at-home body fat test available. And so what we can do with the combination of all those things is kind of be like a GPS for your body composition. So that if your goal is to lose weight, what you really mean is, my goal is to lose fat. If your goal is to gain weight, what you really mean is, my goal is to gain lean mass, not gain excess body fat, right? So we can help you dial in what specific calorie deficit or surplus you want to be on to reach that goal. So think about us like a GPS, right? Here's where you currently are, calories in, calories out wise. Here's where you currently are, body fat wise. And then we'll point you, a report will point you, and then you can also do personal consultations with us we can do custom body weight and body composition mapping for you. I mean, we're just a tool. You still have to do all this hard work yourself. There's no like hacks. This isn't like some shortcut, but we pretty much guarantee that if you have this information, you're not going to be making major mistakes, right? You're not going to be confused as to why something is going on. So we want to basically put you in control of your own body. Once you know, I mean, just think about it like a personal finance analogy. Say that you want to save for retirement, but you don't know how big your paycheck is. You don't know what your rent is. You don't know what your credit card bill is. Like, well, so you're just going to guess your way to healthy retirement? You're going to guess your way out of credit card debt? That's what everybody else is trying to do in the personal fitness and nutrition type space is we'll focus on all this small stuff and we're just going to guess calories. It doesn't work that well. So that's what our mission is, basically, helping people just see the budget of their body, right? And then once you have this budget, you can be in the driver's seat. The final use case I can see for a lot of athletes, like I said, we work with a lot of really serious athletes, is preventing overtraining and overuse injuries. So a lot of these type of issues, say stress fractures in distance runners or things of that nature, hormonal issues that a lot of athletes face, are related to chronic overtraining, chronic underfueling. And we have some really advanced metrics that are really unique to this technology that allow us to basically see if you're overreaching and kind of prevent those negative effects from occurring before they manifest. So for example, there's a type of overtraining called RED-S. It's very debilitating. It's called relative energy deficiency in sport. And, it has bone density implications, menstrual cycle implications, mental health, immune function. It's a really devastatingly bad thing. And it comes from basically chronic underfueling. So we can basically measure if you're overdoing it metabolically very, very accurately.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I love how many different applications you have, like even from just working with the pharmaceutical companies I mean, I don't know if you've ever worked with like supplement companies as well. And just to see, okay, like how does this actually work in the body, I think is really, really interesting. And we need more data like that versus boost your metabolism, like you said, which you kind of see everywhere, right? But I'd love to touch upon you talking about calories in and calories out. Now, I see this so often where people debate if this is true or not. Like, can you eat 1,000 calories and then burn 1,000 calories and that's the same thing? Or is it depends where the calories come from, depends on the type of food, processed food versus whole food, all of the other nutrients that come with that. So how do you kind of educate your, I guess, athletes on that? Do you believe that calories in and calories out are the same? Like, how do you see it?
Yes, they are, but there's a lot of nuance in this. So I want to tackle them. Let's tackle them individually, right? So I think the main reason that people don't believe this is because none of this is being rigorously measured. And so if you're, guesstimating your calories in and then really guessing calories out, it's going to be very, very hard to actually determine whether or not this model works. And it's very easy to get it wrong. So calories in, that's the one that people feel most comfortable and confident in, and yet they're terrible at it. People are terrible at estimating their own calories. It's super hard to do. It doesn't mean you're a morally bad person. It's just that like most of the people that we see coming into our business are pretty bad at counting calories. They might be a little bit better than the general population, which tends to undercount calories and tends to undercount on the order of 30 to 40%, which is pretty bad, right? 700 or 800 calories per day for a typical person, 12 or 1300 calories per day undercounting for a typical obese person. So it's a really, really large discrepancy. And it comes from a few different reasons. Number one, it's very easy to just forget to log something. Like, you walk through the kitchen and you grab that handful of almonds, or you pour a little more olive oil on your salad, whatever it is, right? Like it's just very easy to forget something. Number two, people are terrible at getting food serving sizes right. Even if you're using a food scale, it can be hard. And then number three, these food labels are not that accurate. They're not required to be accurate. And I think that they can be misleading a lot of people. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but if I had to guess, I would say a lot of these labels are probably underestimates of what they actually are. Like, wouldn't a company want their product to say 180 instead of 220 calories? I think so. But regardless, whenever they've been rigorously measured in like a laboratory setting, people are undercounting their calories. Calories out, people also are being misled. There are these calorie equations. You can use any of these online calorie calculators, and they basically take your age, height, weight, and sex. Some of them might take your body fat percentage. Those tend to be about 50% accurate relative to our data, which is like 97 kind of percent accurate compared to like a lab, like an inpatient lab test. So it can be off by thousands of calories per day. And then finally, you have the wearables, right? The Apple Watch, the Oura Ring, the Whoop strap, all of those. And they spit out a really precise looking number, but that's still your age, height, weight, and sex. That device is not measuring anything. It might add a little bit of accelerometry or heart rate. And guess what? All of that does is it takes that 50% and it bumps it up to maximum like 55%. So all the fanciness in one of those devices really only adds about 5% more accuracy. So you're trying to play this subtraction problem, calories in, calories out, with two guesses. And especially on the calories outside, that's where Calorify comes in and actually just measures it. Especially on the calories outside, people can be off by thousands of calories. So whenever they've actually done this in a lab setting, and they've done it many, 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 many times, where they put people into an inpatient, airtight hospital room that measures how much CO2 you're breathing out, and they measure very accurately what food they give you in this food jail. I mean, it's awful, right? You have to go live in an airtight room for a week and eat jail food, right? The calories always work. And it always works no matter what your macros are, no matter what protein, fat, carb mix they give you. So, for example, like they'll say, okay, such and such person is burning 2,500. We're going to put them on a 2,000 calorie diet, and it's going to be a high fat diet, or it's going to be a high carb diet. Well, guess what? The people lose the same amount of weight, and they lose the exact same weight that would be predicted by calories in, calories out. So the math works in a pure science experiment setting. Now, in the real world, like there's a whole bunch more that goes into life than calories. You know, it's like, just because calories are real doesn't mean that a bunch of other things about health and life are important. So I do want to highlight a few of these nuances now. One of them that people forget about is called TEF, thermic effective food. I'm not sure if you've heard of that before, but it takes energy to digest macronutrients, and it takes different amounts for each macronutrient. So some energy is lost. So if I eat 100 calories of fat, I'm going to absorb like 97 to 100 of those calories. It's very, very efficient. Carbs, I'm going to absorb about 90 to 95%. So I have a 5 to 10% thermic effect of food that I'm going to lose. And protein has the highest thermic effect of all. It's on the order of 20 to 30%. So if I eat 100 calories of fat, I'm going to absorb, 20 to 30 calories more than if I eat 100 calories of protein. So there are nuances there. And then number two is that, like I said earlier, right? Like there's just different, like they do different things for you. So like protein just is different in your body than fat is. Like it just has different properties, and there's more to life than just eating the exact same number of calories. But calories perfectly explain weight. They perfectly explain body weight. That is just the laws of thermodynamics. You can't get around them. But like I said, there's a whole lot more to health than calories. That said, I'm a pretty simple-minded guy. I think that if you could do one or two things, I would say do this. Eat generally the right number of calories, more or less, and move. If you exercise and you eat approximately the right number of calories, you're most of the way there. And then, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I mean, you have a lot of expertise in this area, but we could go down the descending order list from there. Maybe get enough protein, get enough fiber, make sure you don't have any macronutrient deficiencies, drink enough water. Like I don't get enough sleep. Like I'm sure that there are a lot of other great things to do. But yeah, calories are a big part of it, and they shouldn't be ignored, and they certainly shouldn't be just like thrown out as something that isn't real or doesn't work. They are real. There's no way to get around that. Your life involves energy. Everything about you is energy. And yes, the amount of energy that you put in your body and the amount of energy that you burn are important numbers. And that's That's our basic thesis. Is like it does matter, right? There's more to life than this, but it does matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. I think that was very helpful just to hear you as an expert talk about that. I've always focused more on the type of food that I eat versus like calorie counting or anything like that. However, I do have an Aura ring and I do have a Peloton and I do have these things that show me all of these different calorie numbers. And now it's interesting when I'm going to look at them because now I kind of question them. And even when you're talking about wearables, like how does that translate to when we actually use like all of these different exercise machines? Like I think about a Peloton ride and it'll say, okay, you burned like, let's say 400 calories in 30 minutes. I don't know, whatever it is. Like, how do they even calculate that 400 calories? And do you think that is remotely accurate for me? Or is that like a general assumption again for the average person who would do exercise at that level for 30 minutes?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'm really excited to talk about it because this actually comes to bring up some of Herman Poncer at Duke, our scientific advisor's work. Using this method, using doubly labeled water, we've made some discoveries on this front in terms of exercise. So first of all, the device itself, yeah, it's going to be some guesstimate for maybe you put your weight in when you logged into that machine and that stair stepper or whatever, and then it's going to guesstimate from there some metabolic rate equivalent for you doing it. Let's just assume that it's 100% accurate for the purpose of this, right? So let's say that you got on the treadmill for an hour and you burned, according to the treadmill, 500 calories. It's exactly accurate. That doesn't actually mean that you burned 500 additional calories that day compared to how many calories you would have burned if you didn't do that workout. It's crazy. So we act like these slices of the pie, like the exercise slice, adds perfectly to the non-exercise slices that I have through the rest of my day. All the energy that you burn not during that workout. But it turns out that they actually interact with each other. So the more that I exercise, the more that it decreases my energy expenditure in other areas of my life. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why exercise is such a good thing. Exercise is one of the healthiest things, if not the healthiest thing you can do for yourself, because it helps your body correctly partition its energy, how to spend your energy resources, how to allocate those resources in the right way. So for example, it might turn down how many calories your immune system burns, which is a good thing. That would mean that you don't have as many autoimmune issues, not as much inflammation if you exercise regularly. So that's good. It does mean, however, that exercise is not as effective for, say, weight loss as maybe we would like to believe, right? So say that you do that workout on the treadmill and the treadmill says 500. It doesn't mean you can eat an extra 500 calories that day. Maybe, and we all know this. We all know this. We all know this, right? We've all tried to play this game and we're like, wow, this isn't working. Yeah, it's not working because it's misleading. It's probably something on the order of half of that. And by the way, this only works at like kind of the moderate exercise levels. We measure many extreme athletes, Tour de France guys, that kind of a thing, and they're burning insane numbers of calories. So yes, if you keep exercising more and more and more, you will burn more and more and more. It's just that at that moderate level that most of us live in, working out 3 to 5 days a week doesn't burn as many additional calories as your watch might tell you. So, and that's because it's actually reducing your energy expenditure somewhere else. Hey, back when I was an elite runner, if I went for an 18-mile run, maybe I would fidget less that day, right? Like maybe I'd just be on the couch a little bit more, right? There are things like that add up. So even if I did burn 1,500 calories on a run, it doesn't mean I get to eat an extra pizza or whatever it is.
Do you have trouble recalling names, dates, or where you left things? I definitely have experienced this. Wouldn't it be nice to feel clear-minded and energized all of the time? I know you want this, and I definitely want this as well. Bioptimizers has created a one-of-a-kind product called Mushroom Breakthrough that can supercharge your brain power. It's packed with highly concentrated mushroom extracts that science shows enhance memory, focus, processing speed, and more. Just one serving contains 5 potent superfoods like collagen and 1.2 pounds of 4 concentrated mushrooms, including lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps, and chaga. This cutting edge blend is a powerful way to rebuild your brain and rewire it for maximum energy, focus, and performance in less than 30 days. After each serving of Mushroom Breakthrough, your ability to memorize and recall information will improve, and you'll get a hefty dose of antioxidants for immune support. On top of these incredible benefits, it's also delicious. It tastes like a rich chocolate elixir. Sip our smooth, delicious drink daily and notice your thinking gets crisp fast. Simply mix it with water or milk and enjoy. Or for a more potent blend, you can mix it with your morning coffee to transform it into a delicious mood-boosting mocha. Don't miss out on the brain-boosting power of this amazing new product. For an exclusive offer for my listeners only, you can go to bioptimizers.com/biohackingbrittany and use code biohackingbrittany at checkout. The great thing about Bioptimizers is that you can try it risk-free and you can use their 365-day money-back guarantee. So head over to bioptimizers.com/biohackingbrittany. Try it now to sharpen your edge and reach your potential. I actually think I'm going to go make a cup right after this. Yeah. It's so funny how many times I hear that. Like, especially as a nutritionist, I'm just very aware of the way that people talk about food. And it's exactly like you said, like, oh, I can go out for drinks tonight or eat this thing. Like, I went to the gym today. And it's like, okay, but you're just, you're reversing any work or any health benefit that you have potentially gotten from that one workout that you just did. And people, I know it's like way more complicated than calories for that type of thing. It's very psychological and emotional. And, people, like to emotionally eat and comfort and all these things. And like you said, like there's life, right? Like there's measuring calories in and calories out in a chamber with nothing going on. And then there's reality. And so
Right.
It's like, how do we take the science that you guys are studying in your product and then apply it to everyday life and the everyday person so that we can actually benefit from it? And I just think it's great that we actually have something that can accurately measure calories. But I'm also a little sad that now when I look at my Peloton calorie count, I'm going to be like, oh, okay, that's actually not that helpful.
Yeah. I mean, it's still one of the best things you can possibly do for yourself. So, you should work out. Good. Like, it's just that it's much easier to lose weight in the kitchen than it is on the Peloton. And we all know that. And then that's the other reason why we like working with people like you, is because there's the whole rest of the puzzle of how do you actually get there. Like, it's very easy for me to just run a test and say, oh yeah, you should eat fewer calories and move more or whatever. But it's the implementation that is actually the real part of it. And when you were talking about, hey, well, I focus more on eating the right foods, great. Just because we measure calories doesn't mean we disagree with that in the slightest, right? If you're constructing a nutritious, diverse diet that has, all the right pieces of the puzzle in there, that isn't super calorie dense, that gets you a lot of these micronutrients, your fiber, protein, all the other things that make, you a healthy person. That's the real deal. So it doesn't have to be an either or. It's not like you have to just live your life by this calorie thing and then ignore all these other aspects of healthy living, or vice versa. It's just this is a big piece of who you are as a human. And, it just really helps to have that top down kind of bird's eye view of what your body is doing, right? How much am I putting in? How much am I burning? How am I burning it? We also provide a quantitative view of how much physical activity you're doing. So it's we can tell you quantitatively how much work your metabolism is doing above its baseline, above your basal metabolic rate. And yeah, that's a big key part of it too, is, exercising enough. So we try to hit it from all these angles and then put people in the driver's seat. But that's why we like working with people like you, is because we're just a tool. We're not the complete solution. We're not a supplement. We're not a shortcut. So it's going to come down to you, people like you, on the implementation side to actually make the difference in people's lives.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And I agree. It's another tool in the toolkit and a very helpful one at that. I have a very specific question, and you might not know anything about this, and that's totally fine. But I am pregnant and I'm in my third trimester. And a lot of the advice that I get from my midwife and what I read online is that I'm supposed to be eating about 400 extra calories per day right now. And then for breastfeeding, which is obviously coming up soon, I'm going to be expending an extra 500 calories per day while I'm breastfeeding. And this is the general numbers I see everywhere. It's all in the books, everything like that. And I have quite a large audience who's in this fertility, women's health space. So what's your take on that? Like, should I actually be trying to eat that much more food right now with breastfeeding? Like, I don't know if you know anything about that, but it concerns me when that seems like a lot of extra calories.
Yeah, so this is a fascinating topic. And yes, doubly labeled water research has been done on pregnancy and lactation, and it's really, really interesting. So it's actually kind of close to a world record for energy expenditure over a 9 month time horizon. The amount of energy that it takes to grow and then to feed a baby is really, really high. There's a metric that we have, we're the only ones that can provide it, called physical activity level, aka metabolic scope. And what this is a multiple of how many of your basal metabolic rates that you're burning. So basal metabolic rate is how many calories it takes to just like stay alive at complete rest. So pump blood, maintain your core body temperature, all that. Pregnant and lactating women tend to have a physical activity level of like 2 to 2.1, which is frankly kind of where we see a lot of the NBA athletes we test, a lot of the elite distance runners that are running, 70 miles a week. It's roughly in line with that. It's pretty high energy expenditure. Not knowing your exact body size or basal metabolic rate, for you, it might be somewhere in the vicinity of 3,000 calories a day. And we could test that and actually just figure out exactly what it is and find you your number. But yeah, it's going to be a decent amount more than your normal expenditure. A typical person, typical activity level is something like 1.5 or 1.6. So bumping it up about a half of a basal metabolic rate to 2 or 2.1 could be an extra 600-ish calories a day easily. It just depends on who you are, what your pre-existing lifestyle was, how much lean body mass you have is a really big one. That's what's going to factor into your basal metabolic rate. And then, like I said, yeah, we can take the guesswork completely out of it and just figure out what you are burning and go from there and know that you're going to need to be in a calorie surplus to keep growing. So yeah, it's actually a lot. And it's kind of crazy. I go back to this world record type concept. So there's this curve, comes from a 2019 paper that Herman Poncer was on, a number of other great researchers. And basically they measured the world record in energy expenditure over different time horizons. So for example, in a single day, it was some like 24-hour run through the mountains. Somebody burned like 16,000 calories a day. In the Tour de France, that's like 3 weeks. Those guys are burning like 8,000 calories a day. So it kind of goes, for a shorter period of time, you can burn more, but for a longer period of time, you can probably only burn about 2.5 is kind of what we think the limit is, 2.5-ish times your basal metabolic rate. And so pregnant and lactating women are pretty close to that line. We're also working with elite athletes that are coming back from pregnancy, right? So professional runners that are lactating and trying to transition back into training. And we're helping them identify how much more can you ramp up right now before you risk, like a stress fracture or some other hormonal problem or something like that. So this is like a very, very interesting space for us. There are some other women's health issues that we're particularly interested in. We're currently doing a test right now on the menstrual cycle. That's never been done before. How does your metabolism change through your cycle? Super cool idea. And then we also get a lot of perimenopausal and menopausal women coming to us. I think that's a time when a lot of different variables are changing. Things can be very confusing. Body composition can change. People want to have a better sense of what's going on. So I think these are all super cool. It's also important to note that this test is completely safe for pregnant or lactating women. There's no radiation or anything like that involved. There's no chemicals. It's literally just a sip of water. So it's a really, universal like technology. We can test basically anyone.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's so interesting just to hear you kind of explain that, how much more expenditure it is when you are growing a human and then when you're breastfeeding or lactating. Like I have, multiple friends who are breastfeeding and they're trying to eat more, but they're still losing weight while they're breastfeeding because I guess they're not eating enough. And it's like this weird, delicate balance of like they're hungry all the time, but they're losing weight, but they're breastfeeding. And I guess it's just such a change from what they're typically used to and like your typical eating habits that it's like such a switch up. Like even I feel the change right now. So I could only imagine. And I love that you're looking at perimenopause and menopause because that is such an important time in a woman's life. So many women go through weight struggles during that time. A lot of people talk about like the hormone changes, right? Like the depletion of estrogen and progesterone and these things that can impact weight. But I don't necessarily hear a lot of people like going back to calories and like looking at that as well. So I'm glad that you're doing tests on that. And the menstrual cycle test is very, very interesting because a lot of women are interested in this idea of like cycle syncing. How do we change from one phase to the next? And then, say we got that data back and we said, okay, like you burn more calories maybe during your, when you have your period. Like, what would we do with that? Like, I guess we would try to change how much we eat during those different times to reflect that.
I just think it's cool, like as a starting point of like, how does this work? Like, that's just the scientist in me. Like, I I don't know what it's like to be a woman, right? But I just think it's very, very interesting that we've made it all the way to this point. We're in 2024 and we don't have answers to basic questions. I mean, this is as fundamental. We view this test as a vital sign in the same way that your resting heart rate or your blood pressure or your A1C. These are just basic facts about your body. And we're like scratching the surface with like what we should know by now. It's 2024, right? We have like abundant genetic data. We have abundant, blood work data, all kinds of other health data. We have all this super powerful AI now, and we have no quantitative metabolic data. And so what our mission is at this company is to, 100x or 1000x the amount of metabolic data that we have on this planet and then use that to actually solve problems, and I think us starting these little tiny small scale experiments right now, like the one we're doing with menstrual cycle, are a great place to, to start. But ultimately, we want to figure out, basics about how the human body works, how these diseases work, and what we can do to solve them. So we basically, that's our mission, is by 2030 to have enough metabolic data to start playing those really big games. To date, only about 15,000 people have ever had this test. That's about one person globally per day since 1982, in the last 42 years. So we've had it. So that's not sufficient. I mean, kudos to the scientific community for taking us to where we are, because they've done some extraordinary work. This is not easy science, but it's time. It's time. We need to step on it. We need to really, really, measure a lot more people, because the fact that we don't know these basic things about menstruation, pregnancy, menopause, athletics, weight, diabetes, like cancer, right? All these things involve basic changes in your energy budget, and we're really just guessing.
Yeah, I love that. Have you done any testing on kids or maybe even babies? Probably not babies, but kids. Just because and I'm sure you're very well aware, the obesity epidemic is like very much impacting kids at young ages now. Diabetes are like more and more people are being diagnosed at earlier ages with both type 1, type 2. So what have you seen with children? Yeah.
So our company personally hasn't, but this type of testing has been done on infants and many children and all that. And I can tell you about the metabolism through the life course, which is a really cool study that was done. But we are close to being able to do some pediatric obesity clinical trials with these new GLP-1 and similar type drugs that you're probably aware of, the Ozempics of the world. So we do want to make an impact on pediatric obesity by basically supporting the development of the next generation of these drugs. So that's core to our mission. Now, through the human life course, it's pretty interesting. So relative to their body size, right? So of course, a baby isn't going to burn as many calories as a 200-pound man, right? But relative to their body size, babies and children and adolescents burn way more calories than adults. And then it kind of comes down and stabilizes in early adulthood, like in your 20s. And it's flat all the way through about age 60. So all of those, same thing, all those magazines in the checkout aisle that say, in my 30s, my metabolism slowed down, blah, 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 or menopause. Probably not true, right? Probably you're blaming your metabolism, but maybe it was your stressful job or your sleep or having kids or your drinking or your diet or whatever it was, right? There's no evidence that people's metabolisms fall off a cliff in their 30s. Um, and then it does slow down after age 60, but it's not a cliff, but it's a progressive decline of about 1.5% per year. And it's independent of how much lean body mass you have. And it's independent of how much physical activity you do. So it really does seem to be like the thermostat is like slowing down and that it's like truly like an aging process. So that is all science that we learned from this method. And, it's really cool. So we do have the capabilities of testing anybody. We pretty much are set up to test, adolescents and adults here, but the science works for everybody and it's safe for everybody. Safe for infants, safe for pregnant and lactating women, safe for people with any kind of disease. It's just water. And so all of that has been done for decades now, funded by the likes of the NIH. So basically everybody knows that this works and that it's safe. So any type of scientific question that's out there can be answered with this method, which is good.
Wow. That's so interesting about when your metabolism falls off, because that's like opposite narrative that I've typically seen. And even when I think back of discussions that I've had or my life so far, like, when you're a teenager and you can eat all the junk food in the world and not gain any weight. And then you have people who, get older in their 20s, 30s, maybe 40s, I guess, and onwards and say, oh yeah, I used to be able to eat like that and not gain any weight. And now if I eat like that, I gain all the weight. But what you're saying is like, there's really not much difference between maybe their 30s and where their metabolism was when they were 16. Like, it does sound like it comes down a little bit, but really not that much.
Well, 16, yes. But once you're like in your 20s to 30s, no. Like definitely adolescents burn more than adults.
So, I mean, that's so interesting though, but even still, like even still, if you were to compare somebody from their 20s to older and like, decades later, and they say the same thing of like, I used to be able to do these things and now I can't eat whatever I want anymore. But maybe that's just a fallacy. And maybe there's, I guess, way more to the picture than what they're alluding to.
Definitely is, right? They're just they're blaming it. It's a convenient thing to blame, especially when we're not measuring it. So you can offload anything you want to on that. But think about what your life was like when you were 25 as opposed to what it's like when you're 45. And maybe your lifestyle's different. Maybe your sleep's worse. Maybe you're more stressed. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot about, your entire life besides how many calories you burn.
Yeah. So you really don't have to test again then. Like so I'm 30 right now. So I could test at 30 and then just not test again until I'm in my 60s to see my decline.
Well, it would change with your activity level for sure. So here's the two main knobs that we know to change metabolism, and then everything else is kind of like smaller scale. So the number one thing is your amount of lean body mass. So basically, the more upkeep that your body has to do, the more expensive it is. So if you have a lot of muscle, it's very expensive tissue to maintain. You have a higher basal metabolic rate. So that's number one. That's going to set your baseline is basically how big you are in terms of lean mass. The second thing is your activity level. So my metabolism, I've tested a bunch of times and, I had a very sedentary week in California when I was 2,500 calories. Typical week for me in California is kind of maybe like closer to like low to mid 3,000s. And then I've had days where I'm hiking 35 to 37 miles on the Arizona Trail in the 4,000 calorie range, where I was trekking over 17,000 feet in Nepal in the 4,500 calorie range, and where I was climbing the 8th mountain world at the 6,400 calorie range. So yeah, if you change your life, your calories will follow. So think about us like a credit score, right? Your metabolism will reliably change when you do, whether it's you change your body composition or you change your activity level. And then all the other stuff, I think from there is probably smaller, right? All the things that claim to boost your metabolism or whatever probably just simply don't have as big of an effect as they advertise.
Interesting. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
So repeat test if you change. Repeat test, if it's just an annual physical and you want to check in every now and again, great. But if you're purposefully changing something, like you're on a purposeful weight loss journey, or you're an athlete purposefully changing your training, whatever it may be, that test that you took, even if it was a month ago, might no longer be relevant based on how you changed your activity. So.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. No, that makes total sense. So if I'm going to train for a marathon, next year or the year after or something, then during that training, I can retest and then assess like how the training's going, how it's impacting my metabolism, how it's actually impacting my metabolism, regardless of what, my Aura ring or whatever machine might tell me. Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And it just goes to show how important physical activity is. And I don't think people need to be told that, but so many people just kind of sweep it aside and don't make time for it. But it actually can make such a drastic impact on your life like this.
It really can. And, Herman, I keep mentioning him, but his work is just so good, especially on exercise. Herman Poncer, our advisor at Duke, truly a world leader in doubly labeled water and metabolism and activity. It's the best possible thing you can do for yourself. It's just that it might not move the needle in terms of total calories burned as much as you might think, but that's not any reason to not do it. It's such a good thing to do. It's just that if your goal is weight loss, it's easier to accomplish that in the kitchen.
Yeah, of course. What do they say? Abs are made in the kitchen.
Yep.
Very, very, very true. Yeah, you can't out exercise. What do they say? You can't exercise a bad diet. Yeah. Which I completely agree with, and I've always agreed with. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I learned so much, and I'm so glad we got to dive deep into calories because, yeah, it was just really, really needed. And I haven't been able to have a discussion like this before. If people want to try your test, where do they go and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, Calorify.com, Calorify.com. Shoot me a note at Hari, Hari, at Calorify.com if you want to learn more or connect on the business side. We would love to work with you. We work, like I said, with a wide variety of folks, including individuals trying to understand and improve their bodies, but also professional organizations and institutions that are, if you need an accurate calorie intake, accurate calorie expenditure, accurate body composition, accurate physical activity level, accurate hydration data, we can serve you in a wide variety of ways. So reach out to me. I can give you a sample of the report. If you reach out to me privately, I can maybe give you a discount and we can go from there.
Awesome. Okay. I will definitely do that. And I will link it in the show notes and on my website so people can find you very easily. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today. And yeah, I think everyone's going to get a lot out of this.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Biohacking with Brittany. If you're interested in finding the show notes or the sponsors for this episode, you can do so on my website, which is biohackingbrittany.com. Remember to follow me on Instagram where I'm most active. My handle is at biohackingbrittany. And if you're interested in working together and you want to email me directly, you can do that. My email is info@biohackingbrittany.com. And I look forward to hearing from you and having you tune in next week.